Hi, this video today is going to be, I thought I would do a share experience video about my experience in quitting alcohol and cigarettes. Now, this is a disclaimer, I'm not a professional, whatever that means. This is just purely from my own personal experience and my observation of the world with people with addiction and how I saw myself in them, even though I was never addicted to anything. Like, I wasn't addicted to alcohol, so I was never an alcoholic, and I've never been a drug user besides marijuana when I was a teen. But my biggest addiction was cigarettes, and I was a social drinker. But for 4 or 5 days a week, I can drink, not to get drunk, but I did consume a lot of alcohol throughout the years. I started smoking when I was 17 years old. 18 years old. About a year after I left home, and it used to baffle me, like years after I started smoking, on how I started smoking, because I couldn't really understand how I started smoking, because I really was terrified of cigarettes. I was terrified. Every time my friend Beverly used to light up a cigarette when we were out of college, and she would light up a cigarette, and I used to look at it and I used to think, are you scared you're gonna die? Like, this is just ridiculous. But a year after I moved out, there was so much on me about just taking care of the bills, the rent, just keeping everything above water. And people who smoked have always made, comments about smoking is something that can relax you. So I bought into that at the times where I felt I was, closer to drowning. I was managing my life, but it was just too much for one person, like at 18 as well. And so I leaned on this smoking. And I remember my friend and I were talking. She was a smoker. She was a regular smoker. And I said, I'll just smoke for about 6 months and I'll quit. And she used to look at me, she goes, it doesn't work like that, love. I was really, really convinced. And to be honest, the first 3 months I wasn't addicted. And then after that, it became real. I was addicted. I wasn't one of those people, like, I used to see in my area and stuff, who smoke 60 cigarettes a day. I just wasn't that type of a smoker. I'll smoke 10 a day minimum, and I would smoke weekends when the drinks are flowing. I can do a whole box right, in one day. So so smoking became part of my everyday life. And there was even a point where, before I came home, because I used to work really late, I used to be in pub management. I'll come home at midnight, but before I get home I had to make sure that I buy cigarettes, because otherwise the very first thing I'm doing in the morning is going out, get my fags, and start my day. That I could not start my day without a cigarette, and I convinced myself of that. Fast forward, I moved to Australia, and I've been trying to quit for a couple of years now, and my quitting lasted, and I think one day I went 12 hours, and I was like, I've done it now. I don't need it, but I'll reward myself with a cigarette, because I managed to last the whole day without a cigarette. So when I came to Australia, I was toying with the idea of quitting smoking, because first of all, it was bloody extortionate. It was so expensive, and second of all, I just got tired of it. I was coming up to 12 years as a smoker, and I didn't want to be like those people who went on about, I've been smoking for 30 years. I just did not want that to be part of my identity. It wasn't, the morning coffee, cigarette and all that was amazing, so pleasurable, but it wasn't great. It just wasn't great. Anyway, so before my 30th birthday, I said I was going to quit. So I went on the vapors, and I tried the vapors before I left London, and it didn't work. I went back to fags. So the vapors just didn't work for me. So I go to India. The vapors was working for me for several months now in Australia. but I was literally puffing on it a lot more than I ever did cigarette, because I could do it from in bed. So it was that easy. I went to India. I was on a vapor for a week because I was in Delhi for about a week before I had to go to my meditation course, Vipassana. And once I was in Vipassana, I could not use it for the 10 days that I was in. So that was a done deal. I kind of made peace with that I wasn't going to use it. And when I was in Vipassana, I never got the cravings. Maybe because the way that the technique was about observing the sensation that you have, right? So I was observing the sensation that I had, and smoking wasn't even a big deal, and which made me understand that smoking wasn't my problem. For years I went around thinking that I could not stop smoking because it had me by the bollocks, but it really didn't. It was the issue. Once my other stuff started surfacing, my feelings towards feeling I'm here on my own and I'm in this world on my own, it's me against the world type of feeling, and can I trust myself with this, and some old other pains that were erupting, and just not having that trust in me, right? So that was all the background, the undertone of my addiction to cigarettes, really. And I was just holding on to cigarette, really, or just holding on to dear life. And that was my only sort of something to lean on. But in meditating, being in Vipassana, I realized that cigarettes wasn't actually my addiction, and I didn't actually need it. That wasn't the belief that was living in my subconscious mind prior to this, right? So I realized that smoking wasn't my addiction, right? Cigarettes wasn't my issue, right? And I realized that there is power in me. I can. And by this stage, it was like 6 days in, and I had the fact that was the longest I've ever gone out without some type of nicotine since I started smoking at 18. So, and by this point I was 30. I then realized that addiction, and over the years, fast forward over the years, talking to people about it, and I did quit alcohol 2 years ago now, talking to people about quitting stuff. When I quit alcohol 2 years ago, I did it because for about 5-6 years my body has been begging me to not put that poison in my body. Like it was just taking it out of me. Like I felt like having that fuzzy head was not for me. Like it just disrupted my day. Like the next day was horrible. Even on a day, it was just horrible. So I decided to quit alcohol. I miss it because I'm a social person, so I did miss it. Like I don't even see the point of going. See people talk about addiction and how much it consumes their life, and how to quit things. And I speak to friends now as well who've seen how I've quit everything, and the misconception is that you just have to be strong-willed for you to quit. And wrong. You don't just have to be strong-willed enough to quit. I had a boyfriend who was addicted to crack cocaine, and I still keep in contact with him now. And when he tells me, at the time I didn't really understand any of it because I never tried drugs, and I didn't never try drugs, so it was a complete different world for me. But now when I speak to him, and he says he relapsed over the years, like he'll go a year without it and then reward himself, just like I did with the cigarette, reward himself with going to smoke. And I realized that it's not that. It's not about being strong-willed. That is not how you get rid of your addiction. You do not. And there is it is a disease, fine, but disease can be cured. When people say that It changes your brain. So it does, but all of that is reversible too, and it's only reversible based on, wait for it, you're changing your perception, having a shift. Okay, the Course in Miracles says, I just looked up because my book is over there. In Course in Miracle, it says miracles happens when there's a shift in perception. That is exactly how I managed to quit, right? You cannot quit anything when you still believe that it has use in your life. That's impossible. Like, it's impossible. Trying to manage the addiction, the substance, it is not how it's gonna leave you. It's not, because your body, your soul, your everything believes that it needs it. Only when you have that realization, what Oprah would say, aha moment, that I don't need it, bling 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 bling, like all the light bulbs will come on. That is the only way you would quit it, and it would be so effortless. And I'm not saying that the craving won't come up, but you go to it and you think, no. And this is my true, humble opinion. I don't just believe it, I know it because I've lived it. Once you have that shift in perception, and I guess this is how, I don't know much about it, but I'm sure this is how hypnotism happens, right? Once you go to that part of your mind where you no longer have the need for that, it doesn't serve you anymore, that substance doesn't serve you anymore, and you know the truth about it. Just like I knew I can hold myself together without cigarettes. I can start my day without cigarette, and nothing is going to fall apart. And if something does fall apart, I can live through it. I carried with me that 17-year-old mind, 18-year-old mind, along with me on that journey of smoking for 11 years. I carried with me that child that was still petrified, which is a lot of us who carry that child that was still petrified about just being left on their own, and nobody to take care of things, and that uncertainty of, can I really do this? Can I survive? Am I capable of taking care of myself or being a decent human being in the world? Can I? And once you have that realization, and once you realize that whatever that substance is giving you, it's soothing, and that's what you believe it to be, is soothing, but it isn't actually changing anything. It isn't actually. And once you have that shift in perception, you won't even have to quit it. It would just leave you. And I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you for watching. Comments below if you have any more questions about it. I can make another video where I can go in depth of substances and addiction. What my perception is on addiction, and in just the mind, and what we convince ourselves to believe. Anyway, hit the comment below, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.